right, what is going on, everyone? Welcome to another Coffee Table Talks. I always like to start this, Robert, with a like, share, and subscribe. I tell my viewers, I tell my listeners, like, share, subscribe. Guys, it beats the algorithm. That's what it does. It gets things out there, and these conversations are so important. I got this guy across from me, let me tell you, and he's so important. He's got so many important things to say. He's laughing at me right now because he knows it's true. And I want to introduce him. Robert Trim. Tell me about yourself, man. What's up?
Good morning, Will. Thank you for having me. Important. I don't know about that. My days of believing I was important are certainly well behind, thankfully. Yeah, a little about me. I'm a kid from New Jersey who came down south and never left. 20 plus years in politics here, local. Loved it. Worked on policy, worked at the legislature, did the whole bit. Happily married to my wife, Kelly. Can't seem to get away from Kennesaw. Graduate of Kennesaw State, college Republican chair there for a long time. Moved back to Kennesaw again. This has become home. Ran away from politics, but get sucked back into politics too. So, yeah, this is me. Have at it. Let's see where we go. Looking forward to the journey.
I love it, man. You know, I met Robert, guys. I met Robert when I was the college Republican chairman at KSU, and found out that he was potentially going to be running for, what was it, House District 35?
35.
Right. And it was a really funny thing because it was either I was going to run for House District 35, which I had everything in my life telling me, no, it's not time yet, including what I feel God was coming down and saying it. And, meeting with Robert, I was like, you know what, he's a good guy. He's got the history, he's got the time, he's got the monetary capability, and he's got the backing of his wife, I think begrudgingly. We can talk about that a little bit. But at any rate, I met Robert with him intending to run for House District 35, and our relationship personally kind of flourished through there. We helped you run. We did some door knocking stuff with the college Republicans, and I think we had a blast, man. I mean, really, I think we had a blast. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, you guys were great. It was fun to get the youthful energy out there. Great folks. Jackson, who now is, as I understand it, a trainee for the city of Kennesaw Police Department. You, Riley, Emery. Gosh, the list goes on. It was a fantastic time. It was great to work with young people who were interested in their community. And let's not forget, one of the other reasons you didn't run is because you found out you didn't live in the district. It was kind of important. So, but yeah, we had a great time. We had a lot of fun. And it, like I said, I really enjoyed, probably in the entire campaign, the part I enjoyed the most was getting to hang out and work with folks on campus and other college Republicans and watching to see what's coming next.
Yeah, man. Do me a favor, Robert. Can you push the microphone just a little bit away from you? Sure. I want to make sure we're not oversaturating on sound. You're fine. It's not going to fall off. Now, I love it. You gotta make sure everything fits just right when you're doing these things. You bring up a really good point, man, in the sense of like how I've progressively learned over the years, right? You're totally right. I had thought that I was in District 35 when all of this came up. And I didn't know how to view districts or really where to get, district maps from appropriately. Now you can go to a couple places, of course, including your local party who should have them there. You can also go online. I now know that now, right? I now know how to observe these things correctly and what different district maps exist. Which has been fun. And, that's such an exemplification, Robert, of what you've been in my life. You have been a teacher, teaching me as a teacher. You know what I mean? It's been nice, dude. It really has been nice. Both you and Kelly. I said this the other night. I had you guys over the other night. I was like, you guys are my family. And you are. I call my college Republicans my Republic fam. You guys are the extension. You're the extension of the family. And that being said, with family, you get fun stories with family. And Robert, you've got a fascinating story, man, that exemplifies, I think, the word change. And I kind of want to dive into that. I want to dive into how you existed as one person And now, given life circumstance, things that have happened to you, things that you have decided to pursue, you've started changing into the person that, God has made you to be, for that matter. Can you give me a little bit of taste of that?
I think what you're alluding to is the ramifications of the charter school amendment. I think that's probably the best way to set that up. I was very, very much involved in education reform in Georgia towards the end of my policy work. 2012, did a lot of work on that. 2010, 2011, 2012, that stretch. And we had done the charter school amendment, and it was incredibly controversial. And it was controversial in places we didn't expect it. I lived in Cherokee County, did a lot of work in Cherokee County at the time, was working for the Senate Majority Leader Chip Rogers. We were, championing that bill after the state Supreme Court ruling, doing the constitutional amendment, and traveling and talking to people about the importance of school choice. And we found some of the most resistance actually at home in Cherokee County. Back then, my at that point soon-to-be wife was a school board member in Cherokee County, and we pushed hard for financial accountability. We pushed hard for some accountability for the superintendents. And I will tell you that if we ever want to do a separate podcast on where education reform fails in Georgia, happy to do that one, because that's an interesting story, because you have to know the legislative history and some of the declarations made by Republicans in this state with the best intent, but with unintended consequences that have truly, I think, adversely affected our ability to get true education reform accomplished. And I must also say, I am horribly disappointed in the 2023 session of the General Assembly, in the House in particular, and their failure to move the education reform bill, defeated by what are so-called conservatives. And that'll go to hopefully a conversation we can have later. But we were in the midst of all of that. There's a question of audit and missing money or misplaced money or unexplained write-offs, or however you want to look at it. There's an argument about amount. Anyway, we find ourselves in the crosshair and the target of the education system. And if you don't believe that the education system is a machine, go fight it. They are the largest employer in almost every county. They are job scared by their administration for the most part. And it's a battle with them all the time. Fast forward, we go through an event. We go through an event. We're called as witnesses to an event. We end up on trial for our statements. We go through that process. We lose in court. I am sentenced at that point, convicted of felonies. I am sentenced to never work in politics or go anywhere where there's politics been done or willing or about to be done again. Literally, man, I couldn't go to a Waffle House because they gave political contributions. This was how outrageous it had gotten. We appealed, we won, misdemeanors, blah, blah, blah. So that's the bellwether moment, or the first of. And it changes my world. I, at that point in 2013, started politics here in 1995, working for Bob Dole on his Georgia campaign in the primary, which we won. And here are the interesting facts and fun tidbits of politics. Part of a team that won Georgia for Bob Dole, and we were summarily fired and replaced by the people who worked for Phil Gramm, who lost Georgia. That's one of the fun things you learn as you're kind of cutting your teeth and figuring out what to do. I had a choice to make, and I decided to work in local politics. But I started that in 1995, so almost 20 years later, here I was facing, in 2014 at that time, no career, a court-ordered end to my career. That is a shock. It sent me into lots of different spirals and directions. It also sent me into a great deal of self-examination. Examination I had ignored for a long time because I was winning elections and running around and got to hang out at the Capitol and with elected officials and people who were actually important. You alluded to me being important, and that's why I find the irony in that. I've only been to one NASCAR race in my life, and it was in the president's suite next door to the Nextel suite, which we got to go back and forth between. And I'm not real sure that's a NASCAR experience, because it wasn't hot dogs and canned beer. But that's the way I lived. I mean, we got out with a state patrol entourage that led us through the crowd and through traffic. I was full of myself, to say the least. So that moment gave me a great deal. It's just one of the little nuggets along the way that I looked at and went, how ridiculous, right? I thought that was important. I thought that's what important meant. So I had to become much more self-aware, and it really, by stripping everything away, and I will say this, and people will think I'm crazy, but it may be one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. Because it forced me to truly look at who I had become and the way I had been behaving. And it made me realize there were a lot of things I had to change. It also made me look at the people around me. One of the things you realize in crisis like that is who your friends really are. Because there are a lot of folks who were my friends when I was winning, when I got them elected, when I took care of their problems. But when I had a problem, they were gone. I found myself with very few friends. I used to tell candidates all the time, running for office will tell you who your friends really are, and they aren't the ones you believe you have. I knew that. I knew that intellectually. I never knew that on a spiritual, emotional basis. So in 2014, 2015, I went through a self-awareness journey, right? Real self-examination. I also had to come to the realization that I was an alcoholic. That I had used alcohol, I had misused alcohol in a way that absolutely made a mess of my life. It just contributed to the chaos. I tried every way I could think of to not actually say those words. 2014, 15, I decided the way to fix my life was endurance sports and thought, hey, let me try this. I've never really done much, but let me try this idea. Let's go do an Ironman. For those of you that don't know, an Ironman is 140 miles, give or take, split up between 2.4 miles of swimming, 112 miles on your bike, and then finished with a marathon of 26.2 miles. That wasn't enough for me. I decided to do the Ironman that had a bonus 4 miles in it. So I did 144 miles, 144.6, and thought that would cure me. That would recenter my world, and it didn't. Because it's still about ego, and it's still about, what can Robert do to fix Robert? And what I had to get to was, there is something greater than me that helps me and has protected me all of these years from some of Robert's worst decisions. So what was I supposed to learn, and what was I supposed to do with this new information? And so I started a journey of transition. I started a journey of trying to understand how I got here. And so I had this conviction hanging over me, and I had a friend who took me in for a job and put me to work and said, "Hey, we got this." And my job was my job. I did it, and I one of the things I pride myself on is doing my job well. And my job at this point was to handle a difficult media person that was giving their association a hard time and at their conference, and my job was to politely and professionally, which I did, explain to them that they're not welcome at some of the more private events, and they didn't have access that they thought they should have had. that media outlet decided to try and blackmail my friend by going to his bosses with my story, their version of my story. And I won't forget the day I stood in his office and he was explaining all of this to me. And I was walking out a bit dejected and overwhelmed, and I just quit. I could feel it. I could quit. I had just quit. And at that moment, the response came to me, and I can only attribute it to when I quit and turned it over and just stopped. God took it and said to me, you don't have to carry this. In fact, stand up and tell people and look them in the eye. There's no shame in where you've been. You're okay. And so I turned around and said, you know what? This doesn't own me anymore. I will stand before anybody and tell this story. And that was kind of, if there was a bellwether moment, that's the seminal moment where I realized my life has to change. And it did change. And that there was somebody with me, something with me, that had always been there that I never made room for.